Parshas Korach deals with issues of kahuna and leviyah, the role of the Kohanim, the role of the Leviyim, and in the end of the parsha, there's a discussion of the matnas kahuna, the gifts that are given to the Kohanim, and there's also a number of psukim which refer to the Leviyim. And the truth is that these psukim cover ground which is already mentioned back in Parshas BaMidbar, with a very interesting difference. If you go back to Parshas BaMidbar and you read the parashas that talk about the Leviyim, the psukim tell us that the Leviyim are there to assist the Kohanim, but there is no mention of the fact that the Leviyim are related to the Kohanim, which is a quite odd thing. But look at the psukim, it says like this: Hakre v'smate Levi, bring close the tribe of Levi, v'hamarata oso lefnei Aaron HaKayin, and place them, stand them before Aaron HaKayin, v'sher suoso, and they shall serve him. Another pasuk: V'ani hinei lokachti es haLeviyim mitoch bnei Yisrael, I've taken the Leviyim from among the bnei Yisrael in the place of the B'chairim. They're given to the Kohanim. V'nosata es haLeviyim la'Aaron u'Levanov, but there's no mention of the fact that they're related. In Parshas Korach, when the psukim speak of the Leviyim, it says, Hashem says to Aaron, V'gam esachecha, also your brothers, Mate Levi, the tribe of Levi, Shevet Avicha, the tribe of your father, Hakre v'itach, v'yilavu olecha v'yishar sucha, and they will join you. V'ani, hinei lokachti es hachechem haLeviyim mitoch bnei Yisrael, I've taken your brothers, the Leviyim, from among the Bnei Yisrael, and I've given them to you as a matana to do the avodas oyel mayed. So in Parshas Korach, we introduce this idea that the Leviyim are related to the Kohanim. The Leviyim are the brothers of the Kohanim, so to speak. And it's noteworthy that in Parshas BaMidbar there's no mention of this fact, that the Leviyim are related to the Kohanim. They might have been perfect strangers. And the Leviyim are given to the Kohanim to assist. And the fact that there's a family relation, a close family relation, is only introduced in Parshas Korach. Very, very curious thing. Let me just mention as an aside a very, very interesting idea that Reb Chaim Brisker says al derech halacha. There's a Gemara in Bechoros which says the following. It says that if a Gentile fathers a child with a Leviyah, if the mother is a Bas Levi, and the Gentile is the father, that child is not obligated in Pidyon Aben, because the child is a Bas Levi. It's the halacha. Daughter of a Levi is not chayav in Pidyon Aben. So if a Gentile has a child with a Bas Levi, the child is not chayav in Pidyon Aben. But the Gemara says if a Gentile has a child with a Bas Kayin, then the child is chayav in Pidyon Aben. So the Gemara says, why should that be? So the Gemara says, because when a Gentile has relations with a Bas Kayin, she becomes a halal. She loses her kedushas kahuna. You see, when a Gentile has relations with a Bas Levi, she remains a Leviyah. She still can be given Meiser Rishon. But when a Gentile has relations with the Bas Kayin, she's no longer a Kayin. She loses the kedushas kahuna. She can't eat shum anymore. And therefore, the child is not considered the child of a Bas Kayin, and therefore is chayav in Pidyon Aben. So Chaim Brisker asks a very simple question. True, the child is not the offspring of a Bas Kayin, but it's still a Bas Levi. In other words, every Bas Kayin is also a Bas Levi. So if the child of a Gentile and a Bas Levi is Potter, because the mother is a Bas Levi, so it's true that this woman, she was novellas to a guy, so she's no longer called a Bas Kayin, but she's still a Bas Levi. So Reb Chaim says an amazing thing. Reb Chaim says that it's not true, that a Kayin is not a Levi. A Kayin is not a Levi. A Kayin is a separate category. There are 3 categories of Jews: Kayin, Levi, and Yisrael. A Kohen is not a Levi. In fact, there's a proof to this, because the Gemara says in Yevamos an amazing thing. There's a machlokas Tanoim whether you can give Meiser Rishon to a Kayin or not. So the Tanna Kama says no, you only give Meiser Rishon to a Levi. Rabbi Akiva says you can give Meiser Rishon to a Kayin also. So the Gemara says, what's the svara of Rabbi Akiva? Because we find 24 places in the Chumash that Kehanim are referred to as Leviim. It says HaKehanim HaLeviim. So from here we learn that all the halachas of Leviim apply to Kehanim. So why do we need a pasuk for that? All Kehanim are Leviim. They're descendants of Levi. I need a Gzeres HaKasuv that a Kayin has the halacha of a Levi? Because in 24 places the Kehanim are called Kehanim HaLeviim. The answer is because if not for Gzeres HaKasuv, if not for a decree of the Torah, a Kayin wouldn't be a Levi, says Reb Chaim. So it's a Gzeres HaKasuv. We learn from Sukkim that a Kayin has all the halachas of a Levi. But if the Kayin loses his status as a Kayin, then he's not even a Levi. So when the Bas Kayin has relations with the guy, and she loses her status of a Kahenes, she also loses her status as a Leviah, and therefore the child is Chayav B'Pidyon Haben. That's what Chaim Brisker says. It's an amazing thing. But the idea is that a Kayin is not a Levi. A Kayin is not a Levi. But Al Kaponim, it seems over here that on this point we have a contradiction in the Parashiyas. In Parashas BaMidbar, the Kehanim are depicted as having no relations at all to the Leviim. And in Parashas Korach, something new is introduced. The Leviim are called the brothers of the Kehanim. How do we understand that? The Parashas Korach is a very, very difficult parsha. Very complex. As every machlokes is complex. It's hard to know what the issues involved are. Let's see if we can tackle it from the following angle. In the end of the story, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu is commanded by the Ribono Shel Olam to take matais, to take sticks, staffs from the Nesiim of each of the Shvatim, and to place them in the Oyel Moed, in front of the Aron, and the one that God chooses, that staff will sprout flowers, and that's the proof who is selected. And sure enough, he took a mattah from every shevet. The mattah from Levi was from Aaron, and they were placed there in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the mattah of Aaron sprouted flowers, and that was the proof of the selection, and everyone came and took their mattahs. So Hashem says to Moshe, Hoshe v'smatei Aaron lifnei ha'edus, put the mattah of Aaron back. Don't give it back to Aaron, put it back in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. L'mishmeres, it should be guarded there. La'ais, as a sign, livnei Mary, to those who would rebel. Utchal klunai somei aloi, and this will be the end of their complaints against me, and that's what you should do. So it says that this is meant to be an ice. This mattah is meant to be an ice. An ice for what? A sign of what? So there's a machlokas Rashi and the Ramban how to understand these psukim. Rashi understands the ice is l'zikaron, it should be a remembrance, shebacharti ba'aron l'chayin, that I chose Aaron as the kayin, v'lo yilonu od ala kuhuna, and no one will ever complain or protest kuhuna anymore. So the Matei Aaron is a sign that Aaron was selected as the kayin. So the Ramban says that it's not so. If you look at the procedure, it doesn't seem to indicate the selection of Aaron as kayin. Because you have a mattah from each of the Shvatim, from Shevet Ruvain, Shevet Shimon, Shevet Levi, Shevet Yehuda, and the mattah of Aaron, which corresponds to Shevet Levi, blossoms. So it doesn't demonstrate the selection of Aaron as Kayin, it demonstrates the selection of Shevet Levi from among the Shvatim. So the Ramban argues, and he says, Ve'ein ha'mata hazeh ois, rak al mata Levi. That what's meant to demonstrate is not the selection of Aaron as Kayin, but the selection of Shevet Levi from among the other Shvatim. Shenivchar mishar Shvatim, lo al Aaron, shetia lo al kahuna. Right? Not that Aaron is the Kayin, it's the selection of Shevet Levi from among the Shvatim. V'hanachai, and the correct interpretation is, l'mishmeres la'is, al Shevet Levi t'murei ha'b'chayres. That Shevet Levi is the tribe that replaces the firstborns. Remember that the firstborns originally were meant to be the ones who would serve in the temple, and Hashem chose Shevet Levi in place of the B'chayres. So one might argue, who says he was Shevet Levi? Maybe some other Shevet. So therefore, this demonstrates that Levi was selected instead of the B'chayres. But that Aaron is the Kayin, says the Ramban, the proof of that was the earlier test, that when the 250, along with Aaron, brought the Ketores, and the fire consumed the 250 and spared Aaron, that's the proof that Aaron is the Kayin. So we already established Aaron as the Kayin, but how we know Shevet Levi are the assistants? That is what the purpose of this miracle with the staffs was to establish. Now this happens to be really a shaila, which is rooted in a machlokes earlier in the parsha. Earlier in the parsha, after the Korach and Dasan and Avir are swallowed up in the earth, and after the 250 are burnt, the ones who offered the Ketores, it says, Vayilonu koladas b'nei Yisrael b'machlas al Moshe v'al Aaron, that all the people came to Moshe and Aaron, and they said, Atem hamitem esam Hashem. You killed the nation of Hashem. There was an accusation against Moshe and Aaron. You killed the nation of Hashem. What was the exact accusation? So the Ramban brings three pshatim. The first pshat the Ramban says is that it's true. The test is a valid test. The fact that the 250 were burnt and Aaron was spared is a valid demonstration that Aaron is the Kayin. But the accusation against Moshe was, why did you have to design a test in which the losers would die? You could have designed a test in which the losers, their claim would be defeated, but they'd be spared, their lives would be spared. Whereas instead you designed such a test that if you lose, you die, so you're responsible for causing their deaths. That's the first pshat in the Ramban. So the Ramban says that, again, the first pshat is that the accusation against Moshe Rabbeinu is not that the test is invalid. The test is a valid test. The test is a valid demonstration that Aaron is the Kayin. But why did you concoct such a test in which the losers, the runners-up, would die? You could have designed a test where the runners-up would live. So it would prove the same thing, that Aaron is the Kayin, but the 250 would have survived. So therefore you're responsible for causing their death. Says the Ramban that this pshat we have to reject. This pshat can't be. Because you see that later on it was necessary to make the second demonstration with the matais, with the staffs. If the first test would have been conclusive, why is it necessary to make a second test? So therefore, to say that the test was valid and the only accusation was that you caused their death, you should have designed a different test, that is an unacceptable pshat. Then the Ramban makes two other pshatim. One pshat is that the accusation is that the test is not conclusive, the test doesn't prove anything, and therefore the 250 died for nothing. Then why would the test not have proven anything? So the accusation was like this, that maybe Moshe and Aaron concocted it with their chachma. It was a trick. Doesn't prove anything. That they figured out some sleight of hand that could bring about the death of the 250. So it doesn't prove anything. Or he says maybe it was a frame up this way. Because we know the halacha is that even a kayin who brings a ketores zara, if you bring ketores, which is an improper ketores, you're also liable for death. Remember, this is what happened to Nadav and Avihu. So he says like this, that the way they schemed was the following. There was a daily offering of ketores in the Mishkan. So that is what Aaron brought. Aaron brought the daily ketores. The 250 brought Ketera Zara. So even if they would have been Kehanim, they would have been liable for the death penalty. So therefore, the fact that they died doesn't prove they're not Kehanim. Maybe they are Kehanim, but it was a Ketera Zara. Why was Aaron spared? Because Aaron, his Keteras was the regular morning offering of Keteras. So the accusation against Moshe Rabbeinu was that the whole thing is a trick. You pulled a stunt, and as a result, the 250 died, and there's no proof that Aaron is the Kayin, and therefore there's an accusation, you caused the deaths unnecessarily. According to that interpretation, the reason we need the sign of the matais, is because it hasn't even been established that Aaron is the Kayin, which is how Rashi learns. Rashi learns that the purpose of the test of the matais is an ice that Aaron is the Kayin. That's undoubtedly how Rashi learned Pshat. That the accusation against Moshe is that the test is entirely inconclusive. But the Ramban brings another Pshat. And this is the Pshat which he says is the Nochem Day, not the correct Pshat. He says like this, that they came and they said that you killed the Am Hashem because you assumed that they wanted to be Kehanim, and therefore you tested them by giving them the Avodah of Kahuna. That's not what they came for. They wanted to be Leviim. So of course, if you gave them Avodas Kehanim to offer Keteres, of course they would die, because they weren't Kehanim. But perhaps they could be Leviim. Perhaps instead of the Shevet Levi, the Avod could go back to the Bechayrim, to the firstborn, and these 250 were all Bechayrim. And therefore, the question of Kahuna is established by the fact that Aaron was spared. The fact that Aaron was spared, we know that Aaron is the Kayin. And the 250 are not Kehanim. That the test demonstrates. But maybe the 250 could have been Leviim. So the fact that the Bechayrim lost the right to be Leviim, and instead Shevet Levi gets it, that hasn't been established by the test. That's why we need the subsequent test of the Matais, and that's how the Ramban learns. The Ramban learns that the purpose of the Matais is not to establish that Aaron is the Kayin, that was already established before. It's to establish that the Leviim are the Leviim and not the Bechayrim. But the question the Ramban asks in Rashi is still a valid question. That according to Rashi we understand the first test was inconclusive, so we still have to establish that Aaron is the Kayin. So how does this test prove that Aaron is the Kayin? It proves that Shevet Levi is selected. It doesn't prove that Aaron is the Kayin. This is the question. Now, we're accustomed to thinking that a Kayin is really the one who is selected from among the Leviim. Just to illustrate this point, there's a very interesting Maharal in Perek Chav Beis of the Tiferes Yisrael, which says like this. In the beginning of the story of Korach, Moshe tells them, Boker, tomorrow morning, V'yayda Hashem Aser Shalo, Hashem will make known who is his. V'es HaKadosh v'hikrev elav, and he will make known who is the Holy One, and he'll bring him close. V'es Asher Yivchar Bo, and the one that God chooses, Yakrev elav, will offer korbanos. So there are three Lashonos of selection. Hashem will make known Eis Asher Lo, and he will make known who is the Kadosh, and the one that he chooses, Yakrev elav. So there are three Lashonos of selection. So the Maharal says, what is the meaning of this triple Lashon? So he says, because the Kayin Gadol is the consequence of three selections. First you have the Leviim, Shevet Levi, which is selected from among all of Yisrael. Then you have the Kehanim, who are selected from among Shevet Levi. And then you have the Kayin Gadol, who's selected from among the Kehanim. So the triple wording of the Pasuk is a reference to the three selections. When you make a determination who is the Kayin Gadol, you're really saying that this person has been selected in a threefold manner. First, again, his Shevet was selected from all the Shvatim. Then his family, the Kehanim, were selected from among the Leviim. And then the Kayin Gadol from among all the Kehanim. So that's why we have three Lashonos. So he says the very name Aaron reflects this. And he says a very interesting thing. When you select something, so the middle is symbolic of selection. As you select something from the middle, from the midst, from the middle of the pool, you select one. So it says like this, that put aside the Aleph first. In the name Aaron, you have Hey, Reish, and Nun. It says Reish, he says, is the middle letter of the hundreds letters. When we talk about the gematrias of letters, so Kuf is 100, and Reish is 200, and Shin is 300, and Taf is 400. So there are 4 letters in the hundreds category. So Reish completes the first half. Because you have 100 and 200, then you have 300 and 400. So the Reish is the middle. It's the completion of the first half of the hundreds. The Nun is the completion of the first half of the tens. Because you have Yud, which is 10, and Chaf, which is 20, Lamed, which is 30, Mem, which is 40, Nun, which is 50, Samach, which is 60, Ayin, which is 70, Pei, 80, Tzadi, 90. So the middle is Nun. So Nun is the middle of the tens. And then of the ones, so Aleph is 1, through Tes is 9, the middle is Hey. So Reish is the middle of the hundreds, and Nun is the middle of the tens, and Hey is the middle of the units, the ones, and that's the idea of 3 selections, 3 middle letters. Of course, what is the result? The result is the one outstanding individual, which is the Aleph. And that's Aharon. So the very name Aaron implies the selection of the one outstanding individual from a process of 3 selections. And this, I think, is the way we think of it. We always think of the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu selected Shevet Levi, and from among Shevet Levi he selected the Kehanim, from among the Kehanim he selected the Kohen Gadol. The truth is, it seems to be historically inaccurate. We know that the Leviim were selected instead of the B'chairim as a consequence of the Chet HaEgel. We know this in Parshas Kisisa, we know this in Parshas BaMidbar. We know in the aftermath of the Chet HaEgel, so Klal Yisrael was guilty of the Chet, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, Mila Hashem Elai, who is on God's side, gather unto me. All the Bnei Levi gathered, and they executed the evildoers, and Moshe said, Milu Yidechem Hayom, today you are dedicated to serve the Ribono Shel Olam. And in Parshas BaMidbar it says that although the B'chairim were already Kadosh from the time of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu performed the Makas B'chairis, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu selected the Leviim in their place, as Rashi explains, again, as a consequence of the Chet HaEgel. So it seems that until the Chet HaEgel, the B'chairis, the firstborns, were going to have the responsibility. After the Chet HaEgel, or as a consequence of the Chet HaEgel, the B'chairim lost their job. It was given to Shevet Levi. Yet the selection of Aaron is written in the Torah before the Chet HaEgel. In Parshas Tetzaveh, it already says HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu to take Aaron and take Aaron's children and prepare for them the big day kahuna, make for them the vestments of priesthood. And Parshas Tetzaveh is before the Chet HaEgel. So it seems that although the Leviim were only selected as a consequence of the Chet HaEgel, the Kehanim were selected beforehand. Now, admittedly, this proof really depends on a machlekes Rishonim. Now, the Shita of Rashi, the well-known Rashi, in Parshas Kisisa, is that the Parshiyas are out of order. Ein muktam u'mucher b'Torah. The Torah is not in chronological order, and therefore, Parshas Truma and Tetzaveh, the commands of the Mishkan were given after the Chet HaEgel. So it could very well be that the selection of Aaron also was only a consequence of the Chet HaEgel. But the Shita of the Ramban, in the beginning of Parshas Vayakel, which we talked about many times, is that the Parshas Aaron's strict chronological order, and the commands were given to Moshe Rabbeinu. The commands of Parshas Truma and Parshas Tetzaveh were given to Moshe Rabbeinu before the Chet HaEgel, and that means the Kehanim were selected before the Leviim, meaning there was a stage, there was a time at which the Kahuna was Aaron and his children, but the assistants were the B'chairim, not the Leviim. And the Leviim only got the job after the Chet HaEgel. The truth is that the Ramban hints to this in this week's parsha, to this idea. It's explicit in the Ramban. The Ramban is talking about the 250. Who were the 250? So the Ramban first writes, in the beginning of the parasha, Pasuk Hey, he writes the 250 were B'chayrim. And they wanted kahuna. And then the Ramban says that this that I say, that they were B'chayrim, is al derech Rabbi Seinu. This is what Chazal say. But al derech hapshat, but in the pshat, they weren't B'chayrim. They were regular Yisraelim who wanted to be Kehanim. And if you look in the Ramban says that where the Chazal speak about this, there's a Mishnah in Zvachim which says that before the Chet HaEgel, the Avodah was done by the B'chayrim, and after the Chet HaEgel it was done by the Kehanim. But he says that's al derech Rabbi Seinu. Al derech Hapshat, that's not the case. Al derech Hapshat is not the case. It's explicit psukim, Parshas BaMidbar, that the B'chayrim were replaced by the Leviim. Now the answer is very simple. The Ramban says, al derech Hapshat, the idea that the Kehanim became Kehanim as a consequence of the Chet HaEgel was not so. That the Leviim became Leviim, that the pasuk says explicitly. But that the Kehanim became Kehanim, doesn't say anywhere explicitly that was because of the Chet HaEgel. That was even before the Chet HaEgel. And therefore, if you're contesting kahuna, there's no reason to assume that the people contesting kahuna were B'chayrim. Right? It wasn't taken from the B'chayrim and given to the Kehanim. It was taken from all Yisrael and given to the Kehanim. The second rank, the assistants, that was taken from the B'chayrim and given to the Leviim. But the kahuna wasn't taken from the B'chayrim. So why should we assume that the people that came to protest were B'chayrim? This is what Ramban says. So this is a very curious thing. In other words, it seems that that kahuna, to be the priests, right, that had nothing to do with the Chet HaEgel. Even before the Chet HaEgel, certainly according to the Ramban, the Kehanim were selected. Why was Aaron selected? Aaron was selected because within Klal Yisrael he was the most deserving person. After Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the biggest tzaddik, he was the greatest Navi, after Moshe Rabbeinu. So Aaron deserved to be Kayin. And the selection of Aaron had nothing to do with the Chet HaEgel, nothing to do with the rejection of the B'chayros. Aaron was selected to be the Kayin on the basis of his personal merit. But to be the assistants, that should have been the B'chayrim. All the Shvatim should have had a chelek to assist Aaron, and it should have been that they had this job to be the Leviim, so to speak. And that's what it would have been, except for the Chet HaEgel, that job was taken away from the B'chayrim, and that was given to the Leviim. So we're dealing with two different subjects. So not contrary to the conventional wisdom. It wasn't that the Kehanim were selected from among the Leviim. The Kehanim were Kehanim before there were Leviim. Right? Aaron was selected on the basis of his merit. The assistants would have been the B'chayrim. That was taken away and given to the Leviim. Now we can understand, the parasha works out a little bit better. It says clearly from the parasha that the 250 wanted to claim kahuna. And Korach makes the argument, listen, why should you keep kahuna, Aaron? Everyone is holy, so why should you be the only kayan? Let everyone else be kayanim. I mean, how was Korach thinking to get away with this? I mean, everyone remembered that the Chet HaEgel, that there were consequences to the Chet HaEgel. The B'chayrim lost their job. It was given to the Leviim. What Korach think? And we're not talking about years and years and years later. We're talking about a number of months later. What did Korach think? That he could make this argument that everyone is equally holy, and therefore why should Aaron be the Kayan, let everyone else be Kahanim? What he did? No one is going to remember the history. No one's going to remember the entire story. The answer is very simple. The answer is because that story that the B'chayrim lost their job, was given to the Leviim, that has to do with being Leviim. The Leviim lost their job. Right? Kahuna, the reason Aaron is the Kayan is on the basis of merit. So Korach said he doesn't deserve it more than anybody else. Notice what I mean. See, when it comes to the second rank, to the assistants, So here you have to select an entire group, right? There were 2 or 3 Kehanim. There was Aaron, his 2 children. There was a small number of Kehanim. But assistants, you needed a large group, right? These are the people that transported the Mishkan. You need several thousand people. So here you have to select an entire category of people, an entire group of people. So who should we select? Should we select a single Shevet? Should we select the B'chayrim of all of Klal Yisrael? We need to select a large number of people. So then we understand that to say we're going to take all the B'chayrim, that we can't do. Because among the B'chayrim, there certainly would have been some that were implicated in the Chet HaEgel. So to say as a category, we're going to allow all the B'chayrim to serve in the Mishkan, that we can't do. Because there were undoubtedly at least some B'chayrim that were involved in the Chet HaEgel. So what group can we select? What group do we know is pure through and through? Shevet Levi. We know that Shevet Levi is the tribe. Mila Shem Elai. They came from Moshe Rabbeinu, every last one. But yes, we'll love Kol B'nai Levi. They all gathered in. So if you're looking for a group, there's no other group that you can select than Shevet Levi. Now you can't pick Shevet Reuven. You can't pick Shevet Shimon. You can't pick Shevet Yehuda. You can't pick the firstborns. You can't pick the lastborns. In other words, if you're dealing with groups, then you have to know that the entire group, every last one, is innocent, not implicated in the Chet HaEgel. So therefore, the only group you can pick is Levi. You can't pick the B'chayrim. So therefore, that makes perfect sense. If you're trying to select this large number of group of people to perform the Levian functions, carrying, transporting, where you need several thousand people to do that, so the only thing you can pick is Shevet Levi. You can't pick the B'chayrim. The B'chayrim are certainly among them, there are those who are disqualified. But if you're looking for Kehanim, all you need is a few good men. You don't need 10,000 people. You need one person. So each of the 250 said, listen, Aaron is any better than we are? We're just as good as him. So the fact that the Avodas HaLeviyah was taken from the B'chayrim and given to the Leviim doesn't mean that the B'chayrim are disqualified from being Kehanim. They can still be selected as Kehanim. And that's why they came. They came to protest. Then why should Aaron be the Kohen? That doesn't do with the Chet HaEgel. The Chet HaEgel wouldn't even have necessitated taking Kahuna away and giving it to Aaron. Because it could be vested in the one innocent person. So therefore, they said, a lot of people are holy. Why should Aaron get it? Why can't we get it? So therefore, it's understood that Korach was not oblivious to the earlier history. Korach may have known that, of course, that the B'chayrim as a group should say, let's replace the Levium, give it back to us. That Korach couldn't have argued. Because after all said and done, the history was remembered that there was a Chet HaEgel, which disqualified the B'chayrim as a group. But if you're thinking about Kehanim, says, why should it be Aaron? Pick someone else from among the B'chayrim. So, the test was performed. Says Rashi that the test was inconclusive. Because as the Ramban explains, in the Pshat that the Ramban himself rejects, the test was inconclusive because maybe it was a stunt, maybe it was a trick, Moshe used this Chachma, maybe it was a Ketera Zara, and therefore it was inconclusive. So now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu proposes a second test to select the Kehanim, to determine who is the Kohen. So we asked the question, that how does this test prove anything? This is Ramban's question. This test demonstrates that the Shevet Levi is Shevet Levi. What does it say about the Kohen? So I'd like to say the following conjecture. That really, when you have a machlokes, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu performs a miracle to determine what the outcome should be, does that mean that it merely clarifies what was true all along? Or is it actually considered a new selection entirely? In other words, you're right, that because of the machlokes, the original selection is null and void, and now there's a new selection of who the kohen should be. Let me, by analogy, tell you the following. There's a Gemara in Maseches Krisos that talks about the appointment of a Melech. So we know that a Jewish king is made king by Mashiach with the Shemen HaMishcha. He's anointed with the Shemen HaMishcha. Now the Shemen HaMishcha is Hegdish, it's holy. But one of the purposes for which it could be used is to anoint a Jewish king. So the Gemara says, Ein Moishchen Melech ben Melech. You're not allowed to anoint, or you don't anoint, a king who is the son of a king. Meaning where the kingship is inherited, there's no requirement of Mashiach. It's not necessary. Because you only need Mashiach to make a first king. But where the kingship is inherited, so it isn't necessary to be Moshech. So the Gemara says, so why was Shlomo Nimshach? If you're learning the Navi, says Shlomo Melech was anointed. Why was he anointed? So the Gemara says, Machlaikis Adoniyahu, because there was a dispute with Adoniyahu, who also was a contender to be David's replacement, and therefore to quell the Machlokes, it was necessary to anoint Shlomo HaMelech. So the Kasha, Achrayim deal with a Kasha, and they say like this, that L'chora, to use the Shemen HaMishcha for that, to settle a dispute, seems to be a misappropriation of a holy thing. The Shemen HaMishcha is Hegdish. It's holy. Right? To use the holy thing for a mundane purpose is Mila, is a Chet. So if the Torah says you can use the Shemen HaMishcha to make a king, okay, that's a permitted function. But what gives you the right to use the Shemen HaMishcha just to settle a dispute? If Shlomo is the real heir to the Malchus, and Adoniyahu is a pretender to the throne, so you're allowed to use the Shemen HaMishcha just to, for PR purposes, that people should think that Shlomo is really the king and Adoniyahu isn't? So Rashi, Rabbi Eliezer explains that Rashi is coming to answer this question. Rashi in Krisos says that when there's a machlokas, there's no Yerusha. There's no inheritance. There's only an inheritance of kingship when it's not disputed. Once it's disputed, then the Malchus is no longer inherited, and therefore Shlomo was considered not as an heir to the Malchus. It was considered the appointment of a new king, and therefore that justifies the use of the Shemen HaMishcha to anoint him. Rashi derives this from a pasuk, because it says, Hu ubanav b'kerav Yisrael, that the king will be on his throne, he and his sons, in the midst of Klal Yisrael, meaning when it's settled within Klal Yisrael, then the Malchus is Yerusha. But when it's not the Kerev Yisrael, when there's a dispute, then the Malchus is not Yerusha, and therefore a Mashiach is necessary to declare a new king. That's what the Rabbi Eliezer says, Pshat and Rashi, in Maseches Krisos. But I'm using it as a mashal, that sometimes when there is a dispute, it's not a question of really clarifying what was true all along. The dispute necessitates an entirely new selection. So my conjecture is that at this juncture, there is a new selection of Aaron as Kayin, and it's totally different. In other words, until now, Aaron is the original Kayin, and the Leviim are given to him afterward in place of the B'chayim. Now it's something new. Now Aaron is the Kayin because he is the prince of Shevet Levi. Meaning there is a selection of Shevet Levi, and Aaron is the creme de la creme. He's the highest person of Shevet Levi, and therefore he becomes the Kayin. And therefore, that's what Rashi understood, that the new selection of Aaron as Kayin is symbolized by the selection of Shevet Levi, and as a result, Aaron becomes the Kayin. And this really explains the entire parsha, because the parsha is very odd. In other words, you have 12 matais that correspond to the 12 shvatim. What was written on each mata? The name of the nasi. L'chayra, if the pshat is as the Ramban says, that the purpose of this test is to determine which shevet should perform the avodas halaviyah. It's a selection of the shevet. What should have been written on the matais? The name of the shevet. In other words, each mata should have the name of its shevet. So then we have shevet Ruvain, shevet Shimon, shevet Yehuda, shevet Yisachar, and then the mata that blossoms shows that shevet is selected, and in that shevet you have the name Yisachar. That shows shevet Yisachar is selected. Right? Instead, each Mata had the name of the Nasi. What is the idea? The Malbim really explains it. The Malbim explains that it was a selection of who would be the Kayan. But the reason he'd be the Kayan is because he's the Nasi of that Shevet. So if Nachshon ben Aminadab was the Nasi of Shevet Yehuda, so if that Mata would have been selected, then Shevet Yehuda would have had the function of Leviah, meaning they would have been the assistants, and their Nasi, Nachshon ben Aminadab, would have been the Kayan Gadol. And therefore, as a result, Shevet Levi is selected, and Aaron is the Kayan. So it's actually a new selection of Kahuna. It's not related to the original Kahuna. The original Kahuna lapsed because of the Machlekes, of Korach. There's a new selection of Kahuna, and this new selection of Kahuna is a totally different paradigm of Kahuna. Until now, Kahuna was a meritocracy. It was given to Aaron because Aaron was the most deserving person in Klal Yisrael. And that's why even before the Chet HaEgel, Moshe is the Melech and Aaron is the Kayan. He needs assistants. So who those assistants have been? Would have been the Bechayrim. As a consequence of the Chet HaEgel, it was Shevet Levi. The fact that Aaron is the Kayan and the Leviim are the assistants has nothing to do with the fact they're related. It's a total coincidence, right? Aaron would have been the Kayan anyway. Let's say, for example, with the Chet HaEgel, it wouldn't have been Shevet Levi that would have answered the call Mila Shem Elai. Let's say it would have been Shevet God. So what would have happened would have been, Aaron would have been the Kayan, and Shevet God would have been the Leviim. I mean, they wouldn't be called Leviim. They'd be called Gideon, whatever they'd be called. But the point is that the fact that Shevet Levi performs the second place function, and Aaron is the Kayan, has nothing to do with the fact that they're biologically related. It's two different things, right? Aaron is the Kayan. That was a selection that was before the Chet HaEgel. That's in Parshas Tetzaveh already that Aaron is selected. The assistants would have been Bechayrim after the Chet HaEgel, and the Leviim were the ones that responded to the Kol Mila Shem Elai. They become the assistants. So it's an amazing coincidence. They have to be related, but it has nothing to do with it. Therefore, in Parshas BaMidbar, when it speaks about the Leviim, there is no reference to the fact that the Leviim are somehow related to Aaron, that they're brothers, that they're cousins. There's no mention of that fact, because it has nothing to do with it. The fact that the Leviim are the assistants has nothing to do with the fact that Aaron is the Kayan, and they're somehow related. It's two totally independent things. The selection of Aaron was on the basis of his personal merit, right? The selection of the Leviim is the consequence of the episode that followed the Chet HaEgel. That by coincidence, it happens to be that Shevet Levi and Aaron are related. But really, there's no connection. That Bechira, that selection of Aaron, was bata, it lapsed. It was a machlekes. There was a contest. Korach and his aide, they protested. They said, why should Aaron get it? There are other people equally deserving. So now there's a new Bechira. And this new Bechira is a totally different paradigm. Here, the reason Aaron is the Kayan is because there's a selection of Shevet Levi, and Aaron is the supreme figure in Shevet Levi. If a different Shevet would have been selected, then the Nasi of that Shevet would have been Kayan Gadol. That's the idea, that the Mata has the name of the Nasi of the Shevet on it. It says now Aaron is the Kayan Gadol because there's a selection of Shevet Levi, and Aaron is the Nasi of Shevet Levi, and therefore he's the creme de la creme, he's the top figure, and therefore he becomes the Kayan Gadol. It's a totally different paradigm of Kahuna. So therefore in Parshas Korach, when it talks about the Leviim are referred to as brothers, as relatives, Shevet Avicha, the tribe of your father, because now the family connection is all important, because by what virtue is Aaron the Kayan? Aaron is the Kayan because he is the Nasi of Shevet Levi. I just want to say that perhaps the reason it did change is because this really quells the machlokes. I mean, think about it for a second. In other words, you have a person who's selected for his own personal merit. There'll always be people that say, well, I'm just as good as him. Well, why him? Why not me? Right? But here it says once it was a selection that's rooted in the chashivus of Shevet Levi, that can't be disputed. Because again, the history of the Chet HaEgel was known. It was known that of all the Shvatim, Shevet Levi was the only Shevet that wasn't implicated in the Chet HaEgel. That was established. So if Aaron is Kayin not by virtue of his personal merit, he's Kayin because he's the Nasi of Shevet Levi, that's beyond dispute. You can't dispute that, because among the Shvatim, everyone knows that Shevet Levi is superior to the other Shvatim. That would be Rashi Shita. I mean, the Ramban holds that's the point of contention, but according to Rashi, that is Pasha. And that Aaron is the Nasi of Shevet Levi goes without saying. So even if in theory, let's say, for argument's sake, let's say that the Nasi of Shevet Ruvain could have argued, I'm a bigger Talmud Chacham and a bigger Navi and a bigger Tzaddik than Aaron. It's irrelevant. Because Aaron isn't getting the job because he's the biggest tzaddik. He's getting the job because he's the Nasi of the finest Shevet. Right? So there could be others that say, of course, I'm bigger than he is. Right? But I'm the Nasi of Shevet Reuven. He's the Nasi of Shevet Levi. Therefore he gets it. Why? Not because he's bigger than I am. He gets it because he's the Nasi of the biggest Shevet. So that quells the machlokes. That's what the Baruch says. That through this method of selection, it'll be Tachal Klu Nasim. That'll be the end of their complaints. Not simply because there's a miraculous selection. It's not only because Hashem did a nice nigla to show that Aaron is selected, but rather it quells the machlokes because it's a whole different basis for selection. It's not that Aaron is selected because he's talking the greatest person. He's selected because he's the Nasi of the greatest Shevet, which is a question which is beyond dispute. So other people can say at an individual level, yeah, maybe I'm bigger than him, which probably isn't true in any case, but a person could delude himself into thinking that. But this much is an established fact, that he's the Nasi of the greatest Shevet. So Mela, that's why he's the Kayin Gadol. His kahuna now is not rooted in his own personal merit. His kahuna is rooted in the fact that he's from Shevet Levi. And the Meshech Chochmah alludes to this. The Meshech Chochmah says that's the very symbolism of a plant. The very symbolism of something, a flower sprouting, right, is the idea that it has roots. It comes from somewhere. It grows out of something, right? The fact that Aaron is the Kayin is because he grows out of Shevet Levi. This is, and the Meshech Chochmah speaks this out. It's not a function of his personal merit, right? It's a fact that he is from Shevet Levi. That's why he's the Kayin. I'm just adding that is something new. That wasn't originally the case. Originally, the case of Aaron's selection is not because he was from Shevet Levi. Aaron's being Kayin actually predates the selection of Shevet Levi, right? So originally it was a function of his personal merit. Says now it's different. Now he's the Kayin because he is the Nasi of Shevet Levi, and that quells the machlokes, because this is something which is beyond dispute.